Welcome to Contact Has Begun, brought to you by the grace of the World Puja Network, one of the last vestiges of truth concerning benevolent, spiritually and technologically advanced off-world visitors. Some refer to these visitors as our greater family of man or returning ancient ancestors. I am James Gilliland, your host, and our guests also include cutting-edge physicists, authors, teachers, and healers dedicated to the awakening and healing of humanity and the earth. Let the journey begin.
Greetings, this is James Gilliland, your host with World Puja. We've got another great show. We've got Michael Tellinger coming on the show, and he's got quite a history with ESET. He's a great friend of ESET. He's been on the show a couple of times, and so we're going to do a short introduction, but basically he's a maverick scientist, and he's made some pretty remarkable discoveries, or brought these discoveries forward, in the officialdom capacity, you might say, and has raised a lot of eyebrows within officialdom. And I can go on and on about his bio here. I mean, it's a very long bio with all the things that he's done, but I really want to get into the work that he's doing, which speaks for itself. So with any further ado, I want to welcome Michael to the show. Michael, are you with us? Hello, Michael.
Hello, James. How you doing? I just lost you for a little while there.
Yeah, okay, great. Hopefully we can keep this line open. I was going through your book, Adam's Calendar, and I think why not start at the beginning of man, for the show. I think it's a great start. But can you tell us a little bit about Adam's Calendar for the people that haven't heard about it?
Yeah, thanks very much. Adam's Calendar is a really amazing site in South Africa, on the edge of a cliff near a town called Nelspruit. The small village close by is called Kaapsehoop, but it's right on the edge of a cliff overlooking what's referred to as the Barberton crater. It's an ancient impact crater, probably billions of years old. The calendar site was discovered in recent times by a guy called Heine, who actually also introduced me to the ancient stone ruins of southern Africa, the circular stone ruins. And Johan accidentally stumbled upon the calendar in 2003 and recognized immediately that this was not a natural structure, that it was a man-made site, or it was put together with special intent. And he did a lot of work on it for about 5 years, and nobody wanted to listen to him and believe him, and until he met me. And when he met me at one of my presentations in early 2007 in Pretoria, he came to one of my presentations on slave species of God. And he thought I was an American author. He didn't even know I was South African. And then he started telling me about all his work and research, and I then joined him, and the rest just started flowing really quickly, and I started getting involved in research in the stone circle ruins in southern Africa, specifically South Africa, and also Adam's Calendar, only to realize that Adam's Calendar is a very well recognized ancient sacred site among the African knowledge keepers, and specifically people like Credo Mutwa, who told me a great deal about it. And when I went to see Credo shortly after I released the Adam's Calendar book, that was in 2000, I think it was late 2008, late 2007, or no, early 2008. And when I met with Credo and I showed him that book, he just burst into tears. He couldn't contain himself, and he told me that it's a very sacred and very special site, and it's called, among African knowledge keepers and the shaman, it's known as Inzalo Yelanga, which means the birthplace of the sun, and that he was actually initiated as a young shaman when he was about 16 years old in 1937. So it has a hugely long history, not only in ancient times linked to the Anunnaki, but also in more recent times when it was then forgotten. But the importance of the site keeps growing. As I started researching it, once I knew that it was a very significant site, I realized that we're dealing with something far more significant than we ever imagined. And it turns out to be exactly that. It goes back to around 285,000 years. It is a spectacular sight, specifically from the energies that we measured there. And it's only really in the last 6 months or so that I've really started to get into the thick of it with Adam's calendar, which I now call Enki's calendar, because it is now clear to me and many others that have been helping me with research that it was actually built by the Sumerian deity Enki, who's referred to as the creator of the human race in the Sumerian tablets, and incidentally is also known as the creator god among African knowledge keepers. He's known as Enkai, the creator god of the human race. And Adam's calendar is referred to as the birthplace of the sun, not necessarily the S-U-N, but also the S-O-N, as in the son of the Elohim, or the son of the Anunnaki, the son of the god, which was the first human being. And it is claimed that that's where the first human being was artificially inseminated into the Anunnaki females at Adam's calendar, or now which I call Enki's calendar. So that, in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Well, I know for those who haven't done the research, I know there's been a lot of research around this, and a lot of the biblical gods and sacred books all around, they always go back, and sometimes they change the names a little bit of these gods, and it seems like they have two gods that they talk about, and in our own Bible we have the Old Testament God, which is the warring, wrathful God, the genocidal maniac, and then they have the all-loving, all-forgiving God, which I would say would probably be Enki, who was the creator God and loved his creations. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, James. Sorry, I just lost you.
Oh, I can repeat.
Yeah, no, I got the two God scenario from you, and I would definitely agree with you on that. I think what's important to point out about the Bible is also the message that we often forget is, and that's the message that Christ injects into the Bible, and that changes everything from the Old Testament, obviously, into the New Testament. Gets turned upside down and on its head.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, from eye for an eye, and when Joshua went into the promised land, he was told by God to invade the towns and cities and just kill man, woman, child, and beast, and destroy the towns because they were worshipping other gods. And suddenly, from that to we're all one and God is within us, and don't harm anybody, rather turn the other cheek, and all those amazing Christ-conscious principles that were suddenly shared with humanity. I mean, that's such two opposite extremes that you almost can't reconcile them in the same, spiritual book, or it's meant to be a spiritual book, but was clearly hijacked by the Roman emperor.
Yeah, they made it very clear. Even most theologians talk about how basic. I mean, there's a lot of argument even to whether Jesus existed or not, but basically in the what they agree with is that he brought the new covenant, which is which is the new law, the new understanding of God, and the ways we need to behave. So that supersedes all the old program. And he stated it very clear, on these two laws lie all the laws and the prophets. Love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. So if we operate from that position, almost all of our troubles will go away, but
Exactly.
Not seeing the divinity in others and nature and seeing the creator in all creation is the core issue of the problems that we seem to be suffering here on earth.
And the suffering just gets made worse by the restrictions of the enslavement through this thing called money. It just gets worse and worse. And,
now this enslavement, I'd love to get into that because it's quite interesting. I've been watching this on a much deeper level, and those who want to trespass and transgress on others seem to have this connection to the warring, wrathful Enlil side of the program that just wants to dominate and subjugate and just suppress others, and demands worship and everything else, which are those with the 1% with a sense of entitlement. And then you have the masses, or the 99% who really want a change, and they want to see an end to all of this greed and enslaved through dependency and the loss of freedoms and everything else we're experiencing on this earth, which seem to align with more of the all-loving, all-forgiving God.
Yeah. There seem to possibly be three entities in the Bible that you refer to. First, we got the wrathful God, the vengeful God, with the Enlil kind of characteristic that we find in the Sumerian tablets, and then the Enki, the opposite, who's compassionate towards his creation and humanity and try to give them knowledge and raise their consciousness, which I believe he succeeded in very, very cleverly. I'm not quite sure still at this stage, and I don't want to digress too much, but I'm not quite sure at this stage if that was cunningly and maliciously done by Enki and his co-geneticists when they were putting together the genetic model for the human race, that they actually encoded it with the ability, specifically did that clandestinely, with the ability that eventually the creature will outgrow or reach a high level of consciousness. That's a very interesting debate which I had a few days ago on another radio station. It was a really lively debate. We can come back to that because it's some very interesting pieces of evidence that suggest and point towards that. But then there's obviously the third God and the third spiritual entity, and that is the source, the divine, true source of all things in the universe. And that's really fascinating because what Michal Ledwith actually introduced to us at the UFO conference in Johannesburg that you were a part of, in his opening statement, he told us that when he was studying as a young theological student, he was studying Hebrew and the Bible and the ancient Hebrew texts and the Sumerian tablets at the same time. He realized that the first sentence in the Bible has been incorrectly written and incorrectly translated according to Hebrew practice, because all beginnings in Hebrew written works have to start with the word with the letter Aleph, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet.
Yes.
And it did start. The Hebrew Bible does not start with Aleph, and so he did this. He added Aleph in front of the opening sentence and paragraph of the Bible. In the beginning, God made the heavens and earth. And it changes the entire meaning of that first sentence. I can't recite the Hebrew sentence as Michal Ledwith does, but it basically says, in the beginning, the Father of all created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth. So it refers to the Father of all, or the Creator of all. I think it actually says Father of all, created the Elohim, the heavens and the earth.
Yeah,
and that
gods.
Changes. Yeah, and that suddenly explains to us who these Elohim are in the Bible.
Yeah, that goes back to what was written in my books as well. They talk about that the first cause, whatever you want to call it, the source, creator, the first step down were the gods. The first creations were the Elohim, which is plural for God. And so the first were the creator gods, and then as the creator gods descended into mass down through the different levels into the physical to experience their creation, a lot of them got stuck and they couldn't get back to the original source. So that's why we have all these other planes and dimensions out there. They're like Ezekiel said, the only difference between us and him is different levels of forgetfulness. We just forgot our origins and where we came from.
Yeah, but once again, I believe that was maliciously introduced to us through the Anunnaki. And I don't know if that's the same information you have, but that is something that has been given to me very strongly in the last year or so, especially.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of manipulation going both ways. It's like there's been a lot manipulation in the past, like kind of, leaving out a few genes and things like that. And then on top of that, my understanding about genetics through a German physicist I worked with for some time, he talked about how these genes, when they're activated, each one has a different trait to it. Like when they start activating, all of a sudden you become more telepathic, which is happening on a global scale. People are moving into what they call direct knowing. They just know things aren't right. People are becoming aware of their past, and starting to see into the future, as these activations happen. And he states that the genes are not fixed, that our DNA is not fixed. It's actually, it's just replicating, but there's an outside source. Like Bruce Lipton's work says, there's an outside source, call it spirit, call it whatever you want, that really is the code writer, the one that changes the code for the DNA to change. Yeah. And my thing is that I think we were manipulating the past, but there's a door out. There's a way out, and we can reactivate that.
This is how I see the situation here right now. Anunnaki arrived on Earth. They were looking for gold. It was a simple mission. They found it in huge amounts, and they started a huge gold colony here. Mm-hmm. They couldn't get enough out of it, and they created a creature. It was a simple thing. They thought, we need some help. They created a creature, and to become a slave, absolute slave, to do the manual labor. Although they had advanced technology, you can't ever replace people doing things. Mm-hmm. And, technology breaks and has to be fixed or whatever. I'm using basic summations.
Usually. Exactly.
But people can just be replaced. Doesn't matter if they get injured or die, they just breed more of them. Mm-hmm. So the slaves mined these gold fields for nearly 270,000 years, around there, until the flood came and swept it all away. I've shown you at my presentations at ESETI the evidence of Anunnaki gold mines here. They cover the whole of southern Africa. It's a vast, forgotten or vanished civilization of stone ruins that it's just spectacular to behold. I've shown how they used sound as a source of energy. So clearly they had advanced technology, and we're finding more and more evidence of the sound as a source of energy. It's just getting better and better. Mm-hmm. And the measurements we're making in these circles, and especially at Adam's calendar. And I'd like to come back to the Adam's calendar energy measurements, because that's just so mind-blowing that it truly is. It just stops you in your tracks when you realize what's going on there, or what will used to go on there and still can go on there if we know how to manipulate the energy. And in the process, they created the human beings very, very basically, right? Mm-hmm. They made sure that they could just follow the orders and instructions and not get forgetful and not get bored and just wander off and do something else. And to do that, they had to give the creature a large frontal lobe, because that's where the processing in the brain happens. Remember, they were, after all, no matter how advanced and brilliant these Anunnaki were, technologically they are masters of technology and genetic engineering, all that kind of stuff. But they had to work with a physical, molecular, organic being, right? So for that being to operate on that level, they had to give it those physical, organic traits. Mm-hmm. And characteristics. And one of those was a large frontal lobe, so that in that frontal lobe it can process the instructions and not be forgetful and all that. Yeah. But at the same time, by giving that creature a frontal lobe, and this is where I brought up earlier, was this by accident, or did Enki do this consciously, knowing that eventually the creature, because it has a frontal lobe, it will be able to compute higher thoughts and start processing, contemplating its own existence and its own being. Mm-hmm. And the moment the creature starts to contemplate its own being, it starts to raise its level of consciousness, and you start the rapid rise of consciousness in those creatures, those beings. Mm-hmm. And from that moment on, as they start that reverse, that cycle of rolling around, regurgitating and recontemplating its own being. Its consciousness explodes dramatically. And that's what happened. And I think they appreciated the flood to a certain extent because it took care of the big problem of these beings becoming more and more conscious and not wanting to do the work anymore and rebelling against the Anunnaki. After the flood, we see a whole different new world appear after the flood. Suddenly civilization springs up all over the world, right? And the Anunnaki start teaching these beings, these humans, how to live in towns and cities without their support, the Anunnaki support, like they had here, with that advanced technology that they had. Suddenly they don't have that advanced technology. They're given Stone Age technology, Dark Age technology, fire, right? And iron. And they're forced to use that to survive with. And shortly after that, they're given this thing called money. But at the same time, they introduce, that's in the Sumerian tablets tell us, when kingdom was lowered from heaven to earth, and kings and priests were appointed to rule over the humans, the lowlife. And that structure, from that moment on, after the flood, when kingdom was lowered to heaven, that's what we're experiencing now. We're experiencing the most harshest extreme of that hierarchical system of control and ownership of the people through this thing called money.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was kind of alluding to. It seems like, definitely we're still running the old archetypal patterns, of the Anunnaki, and instead that although now I don't know if they're gone or not, or they're returning. That's another point, but it just seems a lot of humans, because of that program, have stepped into that role, the role of the Anunnaki, the 1%, and are still trying to play out that game. But the problem is we're having again is where the people are, with that frontal lobe activation going on, are rising up and saying, hey, we're not slaves anymore. We're not going to play this game anymore.
And that's interesting because you're talking about genetics and DNA. And, the lecture that William Brown from Hawaii gave at the UFO conference, I mean, he got a standing ovation. This is a master class in genetics and DNA and the most advanced knowledge and information you can ever imagine, how the morphogenic field affects our DNA and what DNA actually is. Takes it way beyond what I've ever seen Bruce Lipton do. And I think Bruce Lipton did a very important job teaching what he did, but I think William Brown is now going to take it to a whole nother level of understanding and consciousness. And I hope I can get you a copy of that presentation because it's critical for everybody in the world to see that.
Yeah,
because
you just read my mind.
Not only supports that, not only supports what you said, he shows you and explains to you exactly how it works from a scientific perspective so that we can make sense of it, because we're still in this silly physical reality. So we need to try and make sense of it from a scientific perspective. But at the same time, he shows you how it's connected to the higher consciousness and spiritual realms and how the two have crossed over and have entangled. It's spectacular. So to add to what I was saying and conclude that story, this is where it really gets interesting, because what is happening in the world today? There's absolute misery. It's a manic and crazy situation. It's like the whole world is going to becoming a militarized zone, with the governments clamping down and becoming more and more draconian on a daily basis. The bankers are tightening the leash on a daily basis, and people are just feeling the stress more than ever before. So sooner or later, that bubble has to burst. Right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely bursting around the world. I've always said that over here in America we're going to have our Arab Spring, and I think from May on it's going to get pretty crazy. And there's just massive planetary alignments. We are moving into this highly energized field. The Russian scientists have talked about it, Dmitry. And we are coming to an alignment with galactic plane, and the sun is just bombarding us every day. And a lot of people don't realize exactly what the sun is. They don't realize that light carries with it consciousness and energy.
Yeah,
And that's affecting our DNA, and that's affecting our own evolutionary process.
That's exactly, and this is what William Brown showed us so beautifully. And if I can just regurgitate some of his wisdom here very quickly, because it continues this situation that we're in. So we started as slaves, we grew in consciousness, we rebelled, we were shown, we were given sort of freedom, if you want to call it, shown civilization and how to live alone without the advanced technology of the Anunnaki. So that information was removed from us. But then we rapidly grew in consciousness. And as we've grown now, as you said, as we're moving into closer to the galactic plane, and we're bombarded not only by the sun's, the frequencies and the certain light aspects from the sun that is activating our DNA, but also from the galactic core, which the ancients called the Great Sun, that is activating our DNA, and there's absolute scientific evidence for it. This is not just some mumbo jumbo. And what it's doing, what the Anunnaki did so cleverly is they actually jumbled up our chromosomes. Because, and even today I read a new article in New Scientist how the shape of the chromosomes and the way in which they lie and the order in which they are placed in the nucleus plays a huge role in the function of the DNA itself. So what the Anunnaki very cleverly did is they scrambled our chromosomes, which, because they realized that would retard the process of rise of consciousness. But unfortunately, the chromosomes are activated, and the light that is now activating our DNA, the chromosomes within which the DNA lies, right, and the 23 pairs of chromosomes, the light is positioning them into their original sequence, so that they regain their power and their full capacity. At the same time, the so-called junk DNA is being reactivated, as you said, and that is stimulating our third eye, our extrasensory perceptive abilities, and many other things that we can't even imagine right now. And so what is happening now? The question is, why is it that the governments and the military of the governments and the might of the governments is coming down so hard on the people with the banks and their draconian rules that are getting so tight and so crazy? Because they know what most of the people in the world don't know, because they've kept us in the dark. They know what's happening to us. They know we're coming into rapid enlightenment, rapid rise of consciousness that they cannot control. They're doing everything in their power to stop this rise of consciousness. Because if they don't stop this, they have lost this planet forever.
Oh, yeah.
It's as simple as that. Because once we get into a certain level of consciousness and you know what's going on, you have freed yourself from this enslavement, from the repeated life. As you said, we forget who we are, right? The karmic trap that the Anunnaki created for us. That's not a natural order of things in the universe. You know, how can the divine source create a soul that forgets where it comes from?
Yeah. You know, I wanted to get back a little bit, go back, transgress a little bit to how the whatever the powers that be, new powers that were, and the New World Order boys are doing everything they can to stop this process. And exactly. There's a lot of people get really upset with me when I cover this, and I tell them, chemtrails, what are they doing? They're blocking out the sun. They're compromising your immune system. When you're sick, you don't really seek enlightenment. You seek, how can I get rid of this problem, and some of the chemicals in there are very clear. They're there to dumb you down, create Alzheimer's and dementia and all these other things. So, the heavy metals that they're spraying. And then you add all the psychotronics that are going on and the Gwen towers, the cell towers, and everything else, and the transmissions coming from those. Also satellites. There's an all-out effort to stop this awakening from happening, and spending billions of our earnings, our taxpayers' money in doing so.
Well, remember, we were created as slaves. We're still their slaves. They're still using us through deception and lies to do everything they want us to do for them, and then using it against us. it's a beautiful system that they've created.
Yeah.
So, and I understand why some people get upset with you when you cover these things, but it's important that we tell your listeners that if you don't understand this and if you don't know about this, you're not really informing yourself about the full truth. You need to understand the full picture. And I think if you understand the full picture, it's a lot easier to become comfortable with what's happening, and not freak out.
I agree. I always tell them enlightenment means to be in knowledge of the whole enchilada, not just one side of the coin. And so we really need to look at all sides of the coin and the whole enchilada, what's really going down. And like any good doctor, you have to address the wound to create a healing. You can't just say, oh, well, we're not going to address this, because then pretty soon the wound goes septic and you get gangrene and the whole organism dies. Yeah.
So I think it's important to remind your listeners that just keep informing yourself and don't freak out about it. Just use it as your path to enlightenment and higher consciousness, and feel sorry for these people that are doing it. Send them your love and send them your light. Send them your positive energy, because when you do that, it will affect them. And the other important thing is as well that these people that are doing it, that have given themselves to the other side, that have sold their souls, if you want to call it that, they also have DNA. They also are experiencing the same enlightenment and growth in consciousness as everybody else is. There is no device that they can create to stop this rise of consciousness. And this is why they're freaking out so much. They will do everything and anything to stop it, but it's too late. It's too late. You can't stop the consciousness through the activation of our DNA that comes through the galactic light and the cosmic light from our sun, and you can't stop it. Our DNA is going crazy. It's activating so rapidly that people are waking up and they are a completely different human being from what they were when they went to sleep.
Yeah, it's happening exponentially, and I've been seeing it here. It's a two-edged sword. One, with the enlightenment comes a responsibility to act and do something. And so people are waking up and they're going, whoa, I can't believe how crazy this is and insane it is, and how these guys don't even understand karma, or action reaction. They're soulless. They're running amok, and I think on the bigger picture, these poor guys, where are they going to go? When things, when they cross over, their consciousness determines where they go in their next understanding. It's like welcome to hell, if you believe in hell, but that's where they're going. They're going to a very low vibrational plane of existence, a very unconscious plane of existence, where they will continue to war on and manipulate each other for all eternity until they choose not to do it. So why not just choose now?
Yeah. What I find interesting as well, James, is many of the channelings that I've been getting, they're just so positive and so affirmative and supportive in many of the visions and ideas and philosophies that I've had for a long time, and specifically in the last 2 or 3 years that I've been formulating with, especially with my work with contributionism, moving towards a moneyless society and a unified field of not only community, a unified community, but a unified consciousness within that community, and all doing this all without money, in a world of abundance that is firmly placed in a universe of abundance. So what I find fascinating is and I completely lost my train of thought there because I've been rambling on. But what I think where I was going with it is that as people grow towards this enlightenment, and as you said, with it comes a responsibility, and that's where I was going with it, is that more and more people are getting involved and they're sharing their knowledge and information. And just take a look at the amazing effect that the Thrive video has had on a large global population, and continues to have, because of who the person was that did it. Foster Gamble from the Procter & Gamble Empire family, chose to come out and tell the truth and share the information with the people. I know that it features you as well. So it's a spectacular DVD that I think everybody who's new to this should look at. And I say this because we've had an interesting experience here with my friend Michael, who's got a friend who's deeply, I mean, he was mocking us and, always mocking you, all your little green men coming around and all this kind of stuff. He's just got a lot of money. He's got a mansion. He's got 20 cars. He's got 5 holiday homes and, you name it, every toy, every boat, everything you can imagine. Okay, now he's bored. What do I do next? And his wife is very high up in the pharmaceutical industry. She's a very senior person in one of the giant international pharmaceutical companies. We were actually at university together. And she's just, she's the hardcore woman. She's worked very hard all her life. She's not going to believe any of this stuff. She deserves what she's got. And no one's going to take it away from her. She knows how things work. And that's how many of these people in corporate positions, unfortunately, are until something happens. So I believe, and this is what I've been saying, I believe everybody has got a trigger point, a little point somewhere that triggers them from being dogmatic or about it, or being obstructional and argumentative and refusing the new information, to suddenly pushing a button and that little trigger point that makes them stop and listen and pay attention, and suddenly it's a domino effect, and they're gone. They've gone down the rabbit hole, and there's no turning back. And this is what happened to this friend of ours. We gave him this Thrive DVD, and because they're linked to the pharmaceutical industry, suddenly, because this came from a guy that is linked to one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, if he's telling you this, it must be true. So that was his trigger point.
Yeah.
And now suddenly he wants to make 5,000 copies of Thrive and hand it out to everybody, and I think that's what's going to just happen more and more and more. Suddenly people with money that have hit the wall, they don't know what to do anymore. They're going to find the enlightenment and the consciousness, and they're going to start using their money for these kind of means to spread their knowledge and information.
If you go to thrive.com, I believe, it might be .org, I think it's .com, they might have both of them down, but they're giving it away free now. You can go and watch this video free, and a lot of people are going, oh, he's just trying to cash in on this, he's trying to make money, beware. I know Foster pretty well. I've spent a lot of time with him, way before the movie. I knew him back in the late 70s, I think, early 80s, somewhere around there, when I was in Santa Cruz, California, which is where he lives. And I spent some time, with him and some other scientists down at, his beach house and some other places, and had dinner with him a few times, and talked about a lot of this stuff. And he's been here to the ranch, and his family's been up here as well, and they, they're very familiar with what's happening here. I really do believe, from the bottom of my heart, that he's doing everything he can from his reference points and vantage points or whatever to turn this planet around. And and if people see something wrong with Thrive or whatever else, or if they have a better way, submit it. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you see a different way of doing things, submit that. I spent 2 days interviewing for that movie, which kind of got tossed out. But a lot of that was covered. After the interview, Foster said, you gave the most concise interview with solutions than anybody in the movie. But unfortunately, I think maybe because of that, I might have been a little too strong in certain areas, where I just said it like it is. But that got cut. God, I'd love for them to bring out that interview. And but a lot of the interview was covered in the movie Thrive, and because I was addressing, the powers that were and the New World Order boys and the banksters, and really we need to go to the head of the dragon and forget all the little fingernails and smoke and everything else, and look at the core issue or what's really wrong. And they did that, thank God. And I'd rather have him say that and deal with any repercussions, than come on. I'm already having enough repercussions already. We've got, you name it. We've got the county after us and all these other things happening here that we're having to deal with, legal matters. And And right now, I don't know if you're noticing it, but it seems like people are just coming unglued and choosing one side of the fence or the other. And the victims are becoming even more aggressive and angry and pissed off, and the saviors are now being victimized by the victims, and the persecutors are the victims are going after the persecutors. It's just such a mess.
Well, it's a mess because the whole world lives in misery and hardship and stress. I mean, tremendous stress just to survive.
Exactly.
From week to week and month to month, to earn enough money to buy bread and milk and pay for electricity and put petrol in your car and be able to have a little bit of fun, which people actually don't even have time for anymore.
Yeah.
So it's humanity is being pushed right to the edge. It cannot be pushed any further. That's my personal conclusion, and I think you can see it around on people's, just on their faces when they arrive at their jobs, and all this kind of stuff. It's just so where's this heading? Where's this heading?
Well, it goes back to me. To me, I'm seeing that one of the core issues that we seem to be is people come with all this baggage, and the baggage is wounds and traumas from the past and things like that. But the baggage also is that they have acquiesced to the system and have maybe taken out student loans or other loans or things of that nature. And so they're caught on this endless wheel, like, well, I've got to do this. And so when you try to create a different system where you're saying, hey, we're going to work a whole different system here, they bring that old baggage into the new system, and where everybody's just cooperating and living in harmony with each other in nature and working together. They try to bring that old system into the new system and just trash it. And if their needs aren't met by the new system, then they attack the new system. Yeah,
absolutely. But at the same time, I think everyone is looking for a solution. Everyone's staring down this gloomy tunnel, and there's no happy news coming through the gloomy tunnel and on the news channels. It's just doom and gloom, and the doom and gloom is just getting darker every day. So everyone is just hoping for some positive news and somebody to give them some good news that there is a possible way out, and a way that is really a way out, and not just another reshuffling of the deck, and so that a few weeks down the road it comes back to where we are today. Exactly. A real way out. And I think this is where the control of the world population through the banks and the banksters is going to be directly instrumental in the release of this pressure cooker that is causing people to push right to the edge. And I think there are three scenarios that I see happening here. Clearly, the system has failed us, okay, and it can't continue as it is. So it's failed us. So what do? We need to find a new system, but we can't find another system that's based on anything we've had in the past, because the reason we're here now is because that it's a culmination of all the different socio-political systems we've had for the last 6,000 years. And we're in this big mess. So what do we do? How do we change that? And the thing that is causing the problem is the control of money, because it prevents people freedom on all and every level. And I know that we don't really have much time to go into that differentiation and definition of that, but I'll deal with that on my tour of the USA in June and July, go into more detail there. But so how are we going to get rid of this monetary stranglehold of the human race? And there are three scenarios. Either it comes as an external factor, a giant solar flare or a comet hits us, and it fries the satellites, it fries the computers, and
the grid.
Any electronic chip gets fried, so everything goes. We go back to the dark ages within a few seconds. So there's banks closed and there's no money instantly, which is an immediate chaotic situation. We don't want to reach that. We don't want to be in that situation, quite frankly. The other system is that we the bubble just bursts. The socioeconomic bubble just collapses. It just collapses. There's a run on the banks of money in one country, and that just snowballs, and the whole thing collapses. Mm-hmm. And so what do we do when this thing collapses? We've got to find another system. We can't not think of a new system when we hit this period in the near future, I believe, where there's no money and we still have to survive and support each other. What do we do? And that's, for me, the most exciting scenario, because that's where the light at the end of the tunnel gets switched on and shines really brightly, because that's when we can introduce everybody to the concept of contributionism and a moneyless society where people's talents get used to the greater benefit of all in their community. Mm-hmm. And that's a spectacular situation.
And, the one thing, too, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's based on the abundance of nature. And I always tell people, look at nature like one kernel of corn will create a whole stalk with maybe two oh God, I'm trying to think of what corn cobs on, or whatever you want to call it, with 500 each. I mean, I've counted them. I actually counted, okay, how many kernels are on each ear of corn? 500, So now you have at least 1 to 500 ratio. Could be 1 to 1,000 if there's 2 ears on the stalk. That's the abundance of nature. And then you plant those 1,000 or that 500, and then it's exponentially going up. And I've seen mountains of grain and corn and wheat and just rotting because they were trying to keep the prices at a certain level. They were bought and just dumped, and just let rot. They're not even using them for compost. They're just rotting. There's no reason why anybody should ever go hungry.
Now, of course.
That's insane, And you look at the billions of dollars spent, blowing up other countries and leveling them, and Operation Shock and Awe, and Operation Freedom, Operation Liberation, whatever you want to call it. All they did was liberate about 1.5 million Iraqis of their lives, basically, and their homes and their properties. So I mean, where's the freedom in that? What are you free? You're free to either be dead or live in the dark ages. This makes no sense at all, and I think people are waking up to the ridiculousness of this whole thing. But when you've got that much, when you can spend billions upon billions of dollars on these projects that are psychopath, they're very sick projects, and you can let your own people starve and be homeless and not have a job and lose their homes, end up out on the streets and everything else. I mean, what does that say about the leadership?
Yeah. It doesn't say a lot, because we know that the leadership is there to do exactly what they're doing. And often the people talk about what you just raised and what we've been talking about, the misery and the hardship, and people say, how can the governments allow this to happen? Why is it so bad? And people think that the governments and the leaders are incompetent, and this is why things are going wrong and bad, because they're incompetent. It's not the incompetence. It's going exactly according to plan.
Yeah.
They've got us where they want us. This is their plan.
Yeah, they're doing the Enlil program, or supposedly Enlil was a warrior, and he was like a no nonsense. You have a problem, destroy it or break it or control it, which is what our military does right now.
That's it.
So basically, it's the same scenario being played out. The people don't realize where we got our image of God. The image of the bearded God goes right back to the Anunnaki.
Exactly. Zeus. The images of Zeus are probably not bad reflections of Enlil.
Mm-hmm.
But the other interesting thing, James, is that I keep losing my train of thought. I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. Maybe this 3-day fast that I'm on is consuming my brain cells.
I think what's happening, there's so much energy coming in that it's hard to stay focused on on this mental plane, because we're actually
It is.
drawing in from
It
other
is.
levels and being inspired.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go to. It's some of these channeled messages from these beings of light that are giving us, confirmation of what's happening and what the plan is for our planet and so forth, and what's already happened, and we just moving into that. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things I read was a channeling from a being called Adamu. I don't know if you've read that, but what he described very very nicely is the whole concept of human concept of disclosure. When is disclosure going to come? When are the ETs going to land on the lawn of the White House and tell us we're here, folks? And it's a beautiful way that he puts it, and it's just so fantastic for people to read this, because he makes it very clear. Like, well, which one of the more than million ETs that are hovering around planet Earth do you want to land on the lawn of the White House? Which one of the different species from different star systems and galaxies? Which one should it be? That, and he explains that there's so many different types of ETs that are all here. Many of them are here. There are many others that don't give a damn about what's going on here, but those that care are here and they're watching what's going down. Mm-hmm. And apparently, it's a really important event in consciousness, in the history of consciousness and our universe. What is going on this planet?
Who's to say they haven't already landed, and some of the darker ones are working with the powers that were, and that now lighter beings are coming in to finally put an end to that.
That's exactly what he explained. So there are these different levels of these beings. The darker ones that have landed, that have been manipulating and instrumental in doing treaties with the governments and all that, and then the higher level ones that are trying to neutralize that, and then even the higher level ones, which are non-physical, just beings of consciousness and light, who are sending their conscious energy to change and shift things for towards unity consciousness and alleviating all the stress and the negative energy that's been created by these other ones, the malicious ones. But what I found fascinating, and I need to get to this because this blew my mind, is he describes the three types of beings that you get in the universe and in creation. Is this, and I know that you've heard this before, the service to self.
Yeah.
And these are the Enlil kind, the warring types, and he describes the different star systems and planets, and he says there's many of them. There are as many of those that as the opposing side, which is the service to others. And the service to others are, because they don't worry about money and they help each other, they work together, they have far more advanced technology, so it's easier for them to oppose the technology and the negative onslaught of those that are the warring types, the service to self.
Oh yeah.
Because those that are service to self beings are constantly doing treaties with each other, and they're developing their armor, their technology, and their war weaponry and all that stuff. But they're always thinking, is the other guy going to stab me in the back? And eventually they do stab each other in the back, and that's the reality that they've chosen to be in, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's a third group of beings that he talks about, and that group of beings is not service to others, but he basically verbatim describes what I've been describing now for 7 years, and that nearly took my breath away and reduced me to tears when I read that, because he verbatim describes the contributionism principles. Mm-hmm. Society that lives without money, barter or trade or any value or any of that, where all the beings just do what they love. They use their natural skills and God-given talents for the greater benefit of all the people in their community, towards unlimited and unbridled abundance on all levels to match the unbridled abundance in the universe. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are virtually the words that I've been using for so long that it really made me realize that clearly that information was channeled to me a long time ago.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, they, going back to the corn, analogy, I've worked with physicists that, have devices you can actually put in your hand, smaller than a pie plate, that, each coil in these objects, they have 9 coils. Each coil puts out 25,000 watts, and it's ice cold, nothing going in. They're totally tapping 0 point, which is creation itself. And yes. These devices are there, and they have these devices they could just plug into the grid They have devices. They can spin the dynamos at the at any of the nuclear facilities. They could clean this whole planet up and allow us to live a totally abundant life here. With a very pristine environment. Yet, the powers that have been very instrumental in suppressing this and stopping this. But, it's going to come out. I think it's going to come. A lot of it's going to come out this year, between the next 2 years.
Well, the trigger for that, you got to realize that the trigger for that is the collapse of the banking control, the banking system. Because once the money goes, then there's no reason or motivation for anybody to hold on to their discovery or their design or their patent, because there's no money, and you need to share what you do with everybody else in the world and your community. So that's where the whole Ubuntu contributionism principle shows how it turns the hierarchical pyramid on its head, and everything goes the other way. How well can I make a pair of shoes so that when I give it to James, it not only fits him absolutely perfectly as the best pair of shoes he's ever been given, but it'll last him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Instead of how cheaply can I make a pair of shoes, and how quickly can it wear out so I can sell the sucker another pair of shoes. Yeah,
the planned obsolescence program. We're coming up to the end of the hour. We just have about 3 minutes left. But before I go into that, I wanted to make sure. There's no way we can cover all this information in an hour. So what is the best way that people can find out about Ubuntu and find out about, the Adams calendar, to get your books, everything? What's the best avenue for them to take?
James, we've pulled everything together into one website now. So I've got a new website called michaeltellinger.com, and that's the easiest way. Just go to michaeltellinger.com. And there I will share with you all the information and the current work that I'm doing to the best of my ability. I'm not always very good on updating it, but there I will also be launching and releasing the information about the Ubuntu Party, the Ubuntu Contribution System. And it is now official. The Ubuntu Party is a registered political party in South Africa, so we can say it officially. It's not going to be, or maybe, it is now official. So, and also I just want to remind people that we didn't go into politics. I'm not going into politics, registering a political party because I want to be I want to get into politics. The only reason we're doing this is for a platform of credibility, but mainly protection, because some of the things we're going to share with people and the manifesto we're going to put out as the Ubuntu Party to the South African people is going to be so radical that it may be construed as being of being terrorist activity.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we might get into some trouble there. So this is a protection mechanism. So when we start sharing the truth with people and telling them what's really going on and how we're going to move away from that into a moneyless society and give them the steps how we're going to do that, they understand. And obviously, to that extent, I'm involved with the Constitutional Court in South Africa now to bring down the banks and close them down and change the laws in banking through the Constitutional Court in South Africa, because that's the court of 11 judges that changes the laws. They make the laws in South Africa and write the Constitution that then creates the laws.
Great. And all that's going to be up, on your, as soon as you can get to it, up on your website, so people can follow that activity and become up to date on that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very, very close. We're delivering our documents to the Constitutional Court on Friday, so it's a big, big day, not just for South Africa but for the whole world. Because as far as I know, this is the first time in history in any country that a person like me, a layperson, has been given the opportunity to petition the Constitutional Court, a full bench, against the unscrupulous activities of the banking industry and trying to force the Constitution to change the laws about how the banks operate and make money out of thin air. So,
well, I can't thank you enough. I mean, you have my full support, and I'm sure all the friends of ESETI's support in doing this, and all I can say is that you're in our hearts and minds and prayers, and we're going to send you all the support and get all the information out we can to further that cause.
Thank you so much, James, and send my love to everybody on the ranch, and I hope to see you sometime in June when we're coming through on our way from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Great. We're going to organize that. Well, again, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with us, and it's been a fascinating interview and probably one of my best.
Thanks very much, James. See you very soon.
All right, take care. All right, this is James Gilliland with World Puja signing off. Have a great day.